All right, 4 videos in one day. If you haven't seen the other 3 I did before the game, go check them out. It's the Dark Sider with you, talking a little Jets after the game. Driving home in the rain. It's a nasty, nasty day. Anyway, I think today is the day I finally lost a lot of my confidence in the coaching staff and in Joe Douglas, because there's no excuse for sticking with that kid in the second half. And the really sad thing is that he had one good drive where he looked good. He took the ball deep in their own territory, drove it down the field, got a touchdown, scored a touchdown, and now that's going to buy him next week because that was late in the game, fourth quarter. And the fact that he had 2 horrendous drives after that, it doesn't mean anything. They basically, the Jets have gotten to a point where they're looking for any excuse to stick with Zach Wilson. I don't know if it's because they just keep praying and hoping he's going to develop into something because he's got talent, or if they are just completely stubborn and have no ability to admit to their mistake and move on. Whichever it is, the Jets seem to look for any little tiny positive sign they can come up with to let this kid keep playing. There is no reason whatsoever Zach Wilson should have started the second half today. None. He had that, like deer in the headlights look and started fading back and throwing the ball into the ground to get rid of it. He's just afraid. He's afraid out there. Now, whether he's literally scared or he's afraid of making a mistake because of fans booing him or teammates yelling at him, whatever the case is, the Jets are, I would say, they're half a game. Next week when they're down 30-3 against the Chiefs at halftime, the Jets are very, very close to the offense and the locker room revolting against Zach Wilson again. They came into this season with what they thought was a solid playoff team. They moved the ends of the earth to go get Aaron Rodgers so that they could have a quarterback for this team. After last year, after you got the Jets offensive players showing Zach Wilson up on the sideline and raising their hands in frustration. Yes, I'm talking to you, Garrett Wilson. And then, effing Mike effing white shirts. I mean, you're wearing shirts to try and get the kid out of there. They're recruiting Aaron Rodgers in the offseason on Twitter. Go come here. We want this guy. And then they're forced to go back to this kid. It's going to be a very short leash. It's going to get very ugly if the Jets don't do something. And that something should have been weeks ago, signing a backup quarterback when Rodgers went down. They have not done that. And then today, by halftime, before halftime, I'm saying this is it. This experiment is done. Get him out of there. You got to get Tim Boyle in there. And one guy screaming at me, Tim Boyle, are you serious? No, I'm not saying Tim Boyle's the answer, but you can't keep Zach Wilson in there. Anybody has to be better than this kid spiraling out of control. And they stuck with him. They stick with him after all of it. I mean, he just looks terrible. And I don't want to hear about the offensive line. The offensive line was not great, but they played much better than they're getting credit for. There were plenty of times Zach Wilson had time. He held the ball forever. I also hear people saying that receivers weren't open. They showed plenty of replays where there were receivers open, and Zach Wilson is just not seeing them. He looks to one side of the field, he turns his body to one side of the field, and then doesn't see guys that are open on the side he has his back to, which of course you can't see behind you, but you shouldn't be in a position where you're turning and telling the defense that everything's going to that side of the field. And Zach Wilson does that all the time. Stares his receivers down. He's afraid in the pocket, and all of the presence I said he seemed to gain last week was gone today. He didn't have any pocket presence at all. He was immediately looking to scramble and run around. He held the ball way too long. And then, of course, this is just true same old Jets fashion. He has a good drive late in the game, which probably lit the coach's eyes up. And now they're like, okay, well, we see some hope. We're going to go with him next week. I guarantee you Zach Wilson will be starting next week. And I'm willing to bet, I won't bet a lot, but I'm willing to bet a little bit that the Jets will not sign a quarterback this week, despite there being every need in the world to get some kind of steadying presence in there. Something, anything. Zach Wilson is not the answer. Any progress that I feel like he showed last week was mostly gone today, and we get the same thing we always get with this kid. Couple of good throws, a good drive, but mostly him unraveling at the seams. And now we're basically at a point where the Jets are just going to take that little ray of hope and drive a truck through the loophole, and they're going to keep him in there. Despite the fact that this was an extremely winnable game. I won't even talk about the game itself. This was an extremely winnable game that the Jets listen, how many times over the years have the Jets been in winnable games they should have won if only a few things didn't go their way? It has happened so many times. I really wish like there was a way to come up with a list in your head. Like how much money have I spent on stupid things? Or how many times did I drive over this bridge and how much money did I spend on that toll? How many times have I walked past someone in the street, didn't realize they were there, but I knew them? I mean, all these little things that you could never figure out. I want to know how many times the Jets have been in this type of game over the years. I'm telling you, it's at least 40. And 40 doesn't sound like a big number, but when you only play 16 games a year, now 17, that's 3 seasons worth of games. I mean, that's, we're talking over 2 seasons. So as if, it's like the Jets play that type of game every single week for 2 full seasons, and you're still not even there. 2.5 seasons would be 40 games. Well, over the past 30 years, there are at least 30 or 40 games like this where the Jets low-scoring, ugly game. The defense keeps them in it. The offense screws up. The offense gives you hope. They get the ball back. They don't get it done. I mean, just so many things where if something went their way, it's a different story. And it's the same old Jets. They will be the same old Jets until they are not the same old Jets. And same old Jets is just being stupid and not cutting your losses, and they are doing that tenfold with Zach Wilson right now. Tenfold. They should have cut bait on him a while ago. They shouldn't have even had him as a backup quarterback this year. But I guess partially the rookie contract stuff and whatever else. But there's a lot of it has to do with them not wanting to make a mistake, to admit their mistake. They just don't want to fold up the tents and say, all right, we give up and we made a mistake and we need to move on. What other team do you see in this league stick with such terrible quarterback play for this long? This is Zach's 3rd season. He's missed some games here and there, so I would say offhand he's fairly close to having played 2 full seasons as a starting quarterback, and he's showing very little progress. And when I say very little, there is some positive progress from his worst times, but like for instance, he's just very bad most of the time now as opposed to abysmal all the time, but that's not going to get it done. I mean, you can only wait so long for something to break loose and go your way, and the Jets are well past that point at this point. So it is time for the Jets to move on from Zach Wilson. We all know they will not. He will be in there next week, and I will get the early prediction in there that the Jets will get destroyed by the Chiefs. Not because the Chiefs are that much better or they have Patrick Mahomes or they're just such a good team, which they are, but because the Jets are at the top of that cliff where they spiral out and the season turns into a laughingstock. They are approaching that point, and I think a national TV game, which the Jets over the past 10 years or so, very rare national TV games, but when they do, it's always something embarrassing. I have a feeling it's just going to be one of those kind of things. So it'll be a big loss next week. Put the Jets in a 1-3 hole, headed out to Denver. Denver looked terrible today. Last I saw, they were losing 70-20. 70-20. And Miami looks good. So I know Denver's playing a good team, but Denver is not a good team. The Jets should beat them. Anybody want to bet the Jets go in there and lose? I'm taking them. You look me up. I will take your bet that the Jets don't win that game, and I'll be happy to pay to have them win that game, because that means they'll probably be 2-3 heading into Philly. Heading against Philly. They got Philly coming in here. Anyway, enough of that. At this point now, I've lost a lot of confidence in Douglas and Saleh, and there's not much they could do to change my mind unless they actually smarten up and get Zach Wilson out of there for next week, which we all know ain't going to happen. All right, go Jets!